Okay, so let's look at the maths involved with calculating pay, something that should be very close to your hearts at this point in your lives. Before we get into that though, there's some terminology, these things here, that you really need to know. And that'll just be used in questions, and you just need to know what it is as you go into life. So let's copy this down as I go here. Okay, so gross pay. Gross pay is the total pay before tax is taken out. Okay, so it's not what you see. It's not what lands in your bank account. It is the complete pay before tax is taken. Okay, so that leaves you with net pay. Net pay is what lands in your bank account. Okay, so that is the pay remaining after tax. Okay, so here's how I remember it. Okay, just going to draw you a picture here. All right, so you've got a net. Okay. Made of mesh, all right, and you pour stuff through it. Okay, so you've got a whole bunch of things here that are coming through. Okay, small stuff comes out, but there's bigger stuff caught in. Okay, so your net pay is what's left. It's what you finally catch because it's a net. All right, so the net pay is what ends up there at the end. So to use this analogy, this is your gross up here. The bits that go through is the tax, and that there is your net pay. Okay, that's how I remember it. The net pay is what you catch at the end. Okay, let's go back over here. Righto, so wages. Wages is pay given on an hourly basis. Okay, so pay given on an hourly basis or an hourly rate. And overtime is a fact of life there, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. Okay, so if you are being paid through wages, you may be eligible for overtime. A salary is a bit different. A salary is pay that is given on an annual basis. So you get a set amount per year and it's just chopped up into paydays. No overtime. Okay, overtime does not exist in salary. But the good thing is you get paid while you're on holidays because it's just the same fortnight pay every fortnight, no matter what's happening. Okay, so a payslip. A payslip is a document that summarizes things. Now, in this day and age, it could be emailed to you or it could be on a website somewhere. Once upon a time, it was an actual piece of paper. Summarizes pay, the tax taken, how much leave is remaining, like sick days. Okay, now at tax time, you'll get a thing called a payment summary, which summarizes that for the entire financial year. Okay, let's move on. When you're looking at overtime, so overtime can be expressed in a variety of ways. So you might have time and a half overtime. That is simply 1.5 times the hourly rate. So if you're getting paid $15 an hour as your standard rate, if you're on overtime at time and a half, it's simply 1.5 times 15. That's your hourly rate. And as you might expect, double time is 2 times the hourly rate. Double time and a half is 2.5 times the hourly rate. All right, cool. Let's move that along. All right, so let's do the maths of it. Gavin earns $15.22 for a standard 40-hour week. What are his normal earnings in a week? So we're not considering overtime. Like if this has a standard week with no overtime, what happens there? It's pretty straightforward. 15.22 times 40, boom, $608.80. Easy. But Helen earns $18.40 per hour for a standard 40-hour week, and overtime is earned at time and a half. What does she earn for working 43 hours? Okay, so a question like this, you've actually got two chunks of the pay for the week. You've got the standard 40 hours, then there's 3 hours there of overtime. All right, so it's $18.40 for the 40 hours, but it's for that 3, that's the extra 3 hours. If that's the standard rate, $18.40, but then we'd multiply it by 1.5 because those 3 hours there are at time and a half. All right. And if you number crunch that, that's 736 plus $82.80, which is $818.80. Okay. Righto, moving along, we've got a timesheet. Okay, now you'll notice here, when we get into it, Greg works for $16.60 per hour with a standard working day of 8 hours. Overtime is paid at time and a half each day. Some places do that. They will calculate the overtime on a daily basis. Others, it might be on a weekly basis. Depends on the industry, depends on the business, depends on the boss. Okay. Complete this timesheet to calculate the normal and overtime hours for the whole week. All right. So you've got starting at 7 a.m., finishing at 3:30 p.m., starting at 8 a.m., finishing at 4 p.m. Let me show you a trick. Okay, it's a way of figuring out the times here, which you might find helpful. Okay, so we've got 7 a.m. to 3:30. Here's a way which I find helpful. So 7 a.m. All right, no matter what you're starting at, get to 12 midday. Figure out what's going on between there and 12 midday, because 12 midday to 3:30 or 12 midday to anything after that is super easy. That's just 3.5 hours, isn't it? If you get from the morning to midday, that's the hard work done. 7 till 12, that's 5 hours. So the total is 8.5 hours. Okay, but if you get it to midday first, that is very, very helpful, because this bit here, that's a no-brainer. Okay, the hard work is getting to the midday. All right, so if we go through and do this, we end up with 8.5 hours there, 8 hours there, 9 hours there, 9.5 hours there, and 8 hours there. Okay, now, what did the question say? A standard working day is 8 hours. Anything over that is overtime. So what are the normal hours on Monday? Well, there's always going to be actually 8 hours here. Okay? There's always going to be 8 hours. Mind you, if it was less than 8, then whatever would be, there'd be no overtime at all. So then you've got half an hour in that day is overtime. No overtime there, 1 hour there, 1.5 hours there, and no overtime there. Okay, so there's 40 solid hours there. That's your standard issue. And then there's 3 there for overtime. Okay, and all of this, that's at time and a half. Okay, so now use the finish table to calculate Greg's pay for the week. Okay, so here we go. We've got this times 1650. All right, so 1660. Okay, but then there's 3 hours, 1660 times 3, but that is at time and a half, so we multiply by 1.5. Feed all of that into the calculator and you get $738.70. Okay, so just very quickly catching up here, you need to know these bits and pieces, what this means. You need to know how to deal with overtime in the calculations, breaking it into two chunks like that. Okay, you need to be able to get the total hours in a day, and then that's the same as that bit up there. All right, get on with it.